under manipulation means what? They are going to see the variation between the independent variable and dependent variable. Two will be tested with post-test and two groups will be tested with pre-test and post-test together. So that is known as what? Solomon 4-group design. Measurement error can be taken place in many ways. So measurement error is the difference between the measurement you obtain and the truth. Hello everyone, I am Harshita, lecturer, Department of Commerce, Vidhyaashram First Grade College, the Temple of Excellence, Mysuru. My dear students, today we are in the 5th session of Unit 2 of the subject Business Research Method, and the Unit 2 is all about Business Research Design. So already we have completed few of the concepts relating to this particular unit. So let us quickly recall what we have discussed in a previous session. So in a previous session, I was discussing about causal research or experimental research. So what do you mean by causal research or experimental research? So under this type of research, we are going to see the cause and effect relationship between the two variables, and the two variables are dependent variable and independent variable. So that is about causal or experimental research. Next, we have seen all the advantages and disadvantages of experimental research or causal research. And next one is examples and applications of causal research. So these are the few concepts what I have discussed in a previous session, and in your previous question paper they have asked a question on this particular topic, that is write a note on experimental research, or you might get a question on write a note on causal research for 5 marks. So it would be a theory aspect. So this is relating to your causal or experimental research. In today's session, we shall continue with few more topics, that is types of experimental research design. So what are the various types that are included under experimental research design? So the types of experimental research design are determined by the way of researcher assigns subject to different conditions and groups. So here it's not that he has to follow same procedure or he has to follow the same type of research. It depends upon the researcher on what type of information is going to collect and what is the topic. So depending upon that, he will select the type of experimental research design. So here there are mainly 3 types. So the first one is pre-experimental, that is before the experiment. So what they are going to conduct, so we shall discuss in detail what is this pre-experimental. Next one is quasi-experimental, and the last one is true experimental research. So these are the 3 important types of experimental research, that is pre-experimental, quasi-experimental and true experimental research. Now we shall see one by one. So coming to the first one, pre-experimental research design. Now what do you mean by that? So here you have to remember, in pre-experimental research design, either a group or various dependent group are observed for the effect of application of independent variable which is presumed to cause change. Now under pre-experimental research, what they are going to do? So they are going to see the various aspects relating to the dependent group are observed for the effect of application on independent variable. How dependent variable will make changes on independent variable, so that we are going to observe under pre-experimental research design. Now under the types of experimental research, you have to remember 3 things. One is manipulation. So one is manipulation, other one is randomization, and the next one is control. Now what do you mean by manipulation? So under manipulation, we are going to see how 2 variables varies. So suppose if there is any changes on dependent variable, how it will affect the independent variable. So here we are going to see the cause and effect relationship. Next, randomization means what? Randomly we are going to choose one variable, that is known as what? Randomization. and control. So control means what? Here certain respondents will be on a controlled way. So here we are going to control. So here we are going to use the control techniques for the research method, that is known as what? Control. So you have to see all the three things here. One is manipulation and the next one is randomization and the third one is control. Now what is pre-experimental research design? In pre-experimental research design, either a group or various dependent group. So here we are going to see a group or various dependent group and is clearly observed to see the effect on independent variable. So it is the simplest form of experimental research design and it is treated with no control group. So there is no control group here. So under this type of research, we will consider the manipulation, that is how the effect of one variable will affect the other variable, that we are going to consider under pre-experimental research design. Although very practical, experimental research is lacking in several areas of the true experimental criteria. So here according to this pre-experimental research design, I have told you we are going to give importance for manipulation where we are going to see the effect of one variable on other variable. The pre-experimental research design is further divided into three types. So let us see what are the three types of pre-experimental research design. Now coming to the first one shot case research design. Now what do you mean by one shot case research design? So I'll give an example here. Suppose a patient is suffering from pain, then the doctor will give him a painkiller. So that will be implied here. Now, so experimental group and treatment will be given. Next will be the post, that is one shot case study. So here we are going to check, that is post experiment. Now experimental group means what? It is a patient. So experimental group is patient. So here the patient is being selected. So he is having a pain. Now treatment is what? That is giving the painkiller. So treating it with the painkiller to the patient. Next we are going to check what is the reaction on that patient. So that is known as what? Post experiment. So one short case study means what? Here a variable is being taken as experimental research, that is experimental group. Here in this example it is patient. And the next one is treatment is given to him, that is painkiller. Next we are going to see what is the reaction on that particular patient, whether the pain has reduced or not. That is known as what? One shot case study research design. So let us see the explanation here. In this type of experimental study, only one dependent group or variable is considered. Now one dependent variable is patient here. The study is carried out after some treatment which was presumed to cause change. Now, this patient is having the pain and a treatment is given to reduce the pain. That is, the doctor has suggested to take the painkiller. So, that is a treatment, making it is a post-test study. So, after that, we are going to give him a post-test. So, whether taking the or after taking the painkiller, whether the pain of the patient have reduced or not. That is post-experiment or post-test will be done. So here only three parties are there. One is patient who is having the pain and we are going to give him a treatment, and next we are going to test, that is post-test. So that is known as what? One shot case study research. Next one is one group pre-test, post-test research design. Now here if we take the same example, so there is a patient. So there is a patient. So he will be the main thing here. Now he is having the pain. So we are checking. So first we will pre-test. So we will pre-test him. Next we will give the treatment. Again, after giving the treatment, we will post-test. So this is known as what? One group pre-test, post-test research design. So this research design combines both post-test and pre-test. So here there is a combination of pre-test as well as post-test. But seeing to the earlier one, we had only post-test, not pre-test of the patient. Now here what we are going to do, first we will pre-test, that is before giving the treatment. Then after giving the treatment, again we will post-test. So this research design combines both post-test and pre-test study by carrying out a test on a single group before the treatment is administered and after the treatment is administered. So this I have clearly told you. So here there is a patient who is having the pain, and before giving the treatment, we are going to test him. That is pre-test. Then we will give the treatment. Again, we will post-test. That is after the treatment, we will post-test. So that is known as what? One group pre-test, post-test research design. So with the former being administered at the beginning of treatment and later at the end. So there is two tests here. One is pre-test as well as post-test. So this is a second type. Now coming to the third type, that is static group comparison. So in a static group comparison study, two or more groups are placed under observation. So what they are going to do? They are observing the patient. They are observing the patient carefully, where only one of the group is subjected to some treatment while the other groups are held static. Now what here they are going to do? There are two groups of patient. So two groups of patient. So both are having the pain. Now for one they will give the treatment and they will test. For the other one they will not give the treatment and then they will test. So here in a static group comparison study, two or more groups are placed under observation. Now here there are two groups who are placed under observation where only one group is subjected to some treatment. So one will be given the treatment and other groups are held static. For the other they will not give the treatment. So all the groups are post-tested. Now what they will do? After seeing these two, they will post-test. They will post-test and the observed difference between the groups are assumed to be the result of the treatment. Now what they are going to do? Now both patients are having pain. One will be given the treatment and other will not be given the treatment. But after that what they are going to do? They are going to post-test the patients individually. Now they will see the result of this patient who has given the treatment and they will see the patient who have not given the treatment. So they will get the answer with which they are going to make the comparison. So that is known as what? Static group comparison. Hope you are clear with static group comparison. So these are the three types of pre-experimental research design. Now coming to the next one, second type, that is quasi-experimental research design. Now what do you mean by quasi-experimental research design? I have told you under the types of experimental research design, we are mainly taking three aspects. One is manipulation. So one is manipulation and the next one is randomization and the other one is control. So these are the three aspects we have to take here. Now let us see under quasi-experimental which are the things we have to take. So we have to take the manipulation and under randomization and control we have to make a choice here. Whereas under pre-experimental research design we are going to take the manipulation. But here we are making a choice between randomization and control. We'll take the manipulation but we'll make a choice between randomization and control. So the word quasi means partial or half. So what is the word quasi means? It means partial or a half. Therefore, quasi-experimental research bearing a resemblance to the true experimental research but not the same. So you are going to learn about the third aspect, that is true experimental research. Now they are telling that quasi-experimental research is same as true experimental research but they are not one and the same. So manipulation is present. So I have told you manipulation will be present here, evaluating the effect of independent variable on dependent variable. Now under manipulation means what? They are going to see the variation between the independent variable and dependent variable. So here manipulation will be present, and at the same time between randomization and control, either any one of them will be there. So that is known as what? Quasi-experimental research design. So for example, time series design. So what do you mean by time series? That is, before the pre-test, they are going to see the effect one by one, that is on a time duration. For example, if a treatment is given to the patient, that is before the treatment, so each and every hour they will see the result, and after the treatment, that is after post-test, they will see the result, that is after 1 hour they will see the result between pre-test as well as post-test. So that is known as what? Time series design. Now coming to the third one, true experimental research design. So let us see what is this true experimental research design. The true experimental research design relies on statistical analysis to approve or disapprove the hypothesis. So here they are mainly going to consider the statistical analysis. It is a most accurate type of experimental design, and they may be carried out with or without pretest on at least 2 randomly assigned dependent subjects. Now what they are going to do here, it is a most accurate. So when compared to the other 2 types, this true experimental research design is more accurate because it includes all the 3: randomization, control as well as manipulation, with or without a pretest on at least 2 randomly assigned dependent subjects. The true experimental research design must contain a control group. So they will have a control group, a variable that can be manipulated by the researcher. So there will be manipulation, at the same time control and randomization. So all the 3 will be there here. So it must contain a control group, a variable that can be manipulated by the researcher, and the distribution must be random. So it includes randomization also, manipulation also, and even control also. The classification of true experimental research design include. So let us see what are the types of true experimental research design. So the first one is the post-test only control group design. Now what do you mean by that? The post-test only control group design. In this design, subjects are randomly selected and assigned to 2 groups. So here the subject is selected into 2 groups. One is control group, other one is experimental group. One is control group, other one is experimental group. Now what do you mean by control group and experimental group? Here the group of individual who will be controlled in that particular experiment, who will be involved in that experiment, they are known as control group. So and in experimental group, so here the group of people who are suggested to do the experiments. So who are there in order to conduct the experiment, they are called as what? Experimental group. So in this design, subjects are randomly selected and assigned to the 2 groups, that is control as well as experimental group, and only the experimental group is treated. So what they are going to do, I have told you, experimental group is a group of respondents upon which the experiment is conducted. So here on experimental group, they are going to conduct the experiment, not on the control group. So experimental group is treated. After close observation, both groups are post-tested and the conclusion is drawn from the difference between these groups. Now what they are going to do? They are going to experiment on experimental group, that is they are going to treat the experimental group, and later on they are going to check the post-test, that is they are going to check the result, which is called as what? Post-test, and whatever the conclusions they are going to get, they are going to write in the report. So that is known as what? Post-test only control group design. The second one is pre-test, post-test control group design. Now here also they are going to indulge two groups, that is control group as well as experimental group, and for one they are going to conduct the experiment. But what the difference is, before doing the experiment, so they will conduct pre-test, then they will conduct the treatment, then they will conduct the post-test. So first, before giving the treatment, both the groups will be pre-tested, then they will give the treatment only to the one group, and after that they will post-test. So for this control group design, subjects are randomly assigned to the two groups, both are presented, but only the experimental group is treated. So here also they are going to experiment, they are going to treat only the experimental group. After close observation, both groups are post-tested to measure the degree of changes in each group. After that, they are going to see the changes in each group. That is the pre-test, post-test. So before giving the treatment itself, they'll test once. Then after the treatment also, they will test once. And what are the changes they are going to make? They will note it down. That is pre-test, post-test control group. And the third type is Solomon 4-group design. Now, what is this 4-group design? So, here we have a combination of post-test and second group will be pre-test and post-test. So, this will be the two groups here. Now, what they are going to do? They are making 4 groups, out of which 2 will be tested with post-test and 2 groups will be tested with pre-test and post-test together. So that is known as what? Solomon 4-group design. So this is a combination of pre-test only and the pre-test post-test control group. So it is a combination of post-test and pre-test post-test groups. In this case, randomly selected subjects are placed into 4 groups. So they are placed into 4 groups here. The first 2 of these groups are tested using post-test method only. Now what they are going to do? 2 groups will be tested with post-test method and other remaining 2 groups will be tested with pre-test and post-test method. So that is known as what? Solomon 4-group design. So this is about types of experimental research design. Now coming to the next topic, so what are the errors that are affecting research results? So let us see what are the errors which are there in research design which will affect the research results. So information gained from the research projects should be accurate as possible. So we have to be very careful while collecting the information, because if we collect the wrong information, it ultimately affects the research report. So we have to make sure that as much as possible we have to minimize the errors. So information gained from the research project should be as accurate as possible. So we have to make sure that it should be correct. Any research project is subject to errors, so research designer must do everything he or she can minimize them. So always the researcher have to be very careful in order to minimize the errors, because always we will look into the accuracy of research report. 2 general errors have important implication in research design. So let us see which are those errors which affect the quality of research report. So the first one is errors relating to the improper selection of respondents. So when we don't select the respondents properly, so we cannot get information from all the respondents. So we have to select the right respondent here. So the first error normally occurs due to the wrong selection of respondents. And the next one is errors related to accuracy of responses. So even though if we select the right respondent, but whatever the information they are going to give us, so we cannot tell that it is 100% accurate. There may be a chances of wrong information also. In that situation also, it affects the accuracy of research report. So let us see what are the errors which comes under these 2 types. Now coming to the first one, Errors related to improper selection of respondents. So when we select a wrong respondent, that is, who are the respondents? The researcher will select those people from whom the information has to be collected. They are termed as respondents. Now here, what are the mistakes which is being conducted by the researcher while selecting the wrong respondent? So the first one is population specification error. Next one is sampling error. Third one is selection error. Fourth one is frame errors. And the next one is survey non-response errors. And under the second types, errors related to accuracy of responses. So, whatever the information where the respondent is giving, in that also it may not be accurate. In that situation, we have to face these type of errors like non-response errors, surrogate information errors, measurement errors from interviewers, measurement errors from questions, measurement errors from respondents. So these are the few types of errors which will be made by the researcher in his research process. So let us discuss one by one here. So the first one is population specification error. So what do I mean by population specification error? This type of error occurs when the researcher selects an inappropriate population. So what do you mean by inappropriate population? That is the population which is not related to his particular subject. Suppose if the researcher wants to collect the information from the students, then he has to select the population as students only. So he cannot collect from their parents, correct? So in that situation, so we have to make sure that whatever the research we are going to conduct, what is our problem, on the basis of that we have to select the population. So this type of errors occurs when the researcher selects an inappropriate population or universe for which to obtain the data. So if we select the wrong population, then it affects the research work. Example, packed goods manufacturers frequently survey housewives because they are as an easy contact. Now normally what happens when coming to the household things, so normally the researcher will contact the housewife because the housewife is the one who will be familiar with those products. Now, see the example here. Also, it is assumed housewife decide what is to be purchased and do the actual purchasing for the household. So, the housewife will know what to purchase and what not to purchase in the house. However, in this situation, there often is a population specification error. In this situation, there may be a chances of this type of error, that is population specification error. Increasingly, husbands may purchase a significant share of the packed goods and have significant influence over what is bought. Now, we can't tell that only housewife will know all the information about the household activities. So, the things which has to be brought to the home might have done by the husbands also. So, in that situation, if the researcher just contact the housewife, then it will be a problem for them because certain housewife may not be knowing anything about it because their husband will bring everything for them. In that situation, it leads to population specification error. At the same time, I have told you the information which has to be collected from the students. Then the researcher has to collect from the students. He cannot collect from their parents. Okay, so this type of error, that is while deciding the population, the researcher has to be very careful whether which population he has to decide. If not, it may lead to population specification error. Next one is sampling error. Now, what do you mean by sampling error? So, it occurs when the sample does not accurately represents the population. So, here sample means what? They are going to conduct or they are going to collect the information from a similar type of people or similar group of people. Now, here also when there are large population, here the researcher cannot randomly select the sample. So, he has to see their nature and depending upon the nature, he has to select the sample. Example, suppose that we used tweets or Twitter to recruit a random sample of 500 people from the general adult population. Now, suppose what they are going to do here. So, from the Twitter, they are randomly taking how much? 500 people. So they are thinking that they are going to take only the adult population. But do you think in the Twitter there will be only adult population? No. In that situation, it leads to sampling error. Of course, they are going to select from the Twitter, but so Twitter is a population. They have selected the population correctly. But in the Twitter, there is not only adult people. There are many other people also like youngsters. So they have randomly taken 500 people thinking that they are all adults. But what happens? After an analysis, though we find our study was composed only of people aged between 18 to 35 years. So we have found that after the study, we have analyzed that it was not adults, it was only 18 to 35 years. Or for example, suppose we want to collect the information from the old age people, then what happens? We have to contact them only. So we can't collect the information from the youngsters. So the more homogeneous the population, that is meaning people who are similar. So similar type of people are included under sample. The smaller the sampling error, as the sample size increases, sampling error decreases. So as the size of sampling goes on increasing, sampling errors comes down, sampling error decreases. So if the sample size is too small, then the sample error will be more. So there is an inverse relationship between the sampling size as well as the sampling error. If a census were conducted, that is all elements of the population were included, there would be no sampling error. Suppose I have told you, if the sample size is too large, then the sampling error will be very less. So if we are going to collect the information from the whole population, then the sample error will be reduced. So this is about sampling error. Next one is selection error. So we have learnt about population error. Next one is sampling error. Now we are going to learn about selection error. So selection error is a sampling error. So it is also one of the sampling error that occurs when the sample is selected by a non-probability method. So if the sample is selected on the basis of non-probability method, they are termed as what? Selection error. Selection error often reflects people who are easily reached, are better dressed, have better kept homes, or are more pleasant. So here selection error, while selecting the population, so we have to be careful. So we can't randomly reflect the people on the basis of easily reached. So for example, I have told you housewife can be easily reached. It doesn't mean that all the activities will be done by the housewife itself. So it will be done by their husbands also. In that situation, selection error will occur. In the same way, or better dressed. So we can't tell that all better dressed people are well knowledged people. In the same way, the people who don't dress well will not know anything. So we can't assume such type of things. So we have to be very careful while selecting the sample. So these types of samples rarely represents the desired population. Having clear written procedures that specify how to select the respondents can help to reduce the selection error. So while selecting a sample, we have to be very careful. We have to select the exact sample. We have to study about them. Then we have to select the sample. Next one is frame error. So what do I mean by frame? So it is a framework within which all the activities takes place. So a sampling frame represents that all members of the population. So it is a frame within which all the activities takes place. It is usually a listing of the respondents you want to sample. So it is usually means what? Listing of the respondents, listing of the person from whom you want to collect the information. Example, a sample frame for a study of shopping mall includes all shoppers in the mall during the time of data collection. Now here the sampling frame or the sampling frame is what? All the shopkeepers. So all the shopkeepers of the mall. So they are the samples here. So it is a framework within which only the mall shopkeepers are included here. So we cannot go outside and collect the information from any other person, that is any other shopkeeper. So we are indulging ourselves into a confined area, that is mall. So that is known as what? Frame error. A perfect frame identifies each member of the targeted population once, but only once, and does not include members outside of the specific population. Here I have told you any of the outsiders cannot enter, only the shopkeepers of that particular mall will be confined. That is known as what? Frame error. Frame error. So here a framework will be made within which the activities has to be taken place. Next one is survey non-response error. So what do you mean by that? Non-response errors occurs when the respondents and non-respondents are too different. So here what happens? The respondents and non-respondents are too different. Your respondent should accurately represent the population you want to sample. So here whenever the researcher asks a respondent, so the respondent should be very responsible to answer. So if non-respondents are not equally distributed across the population, you will not have an accurate sample. So here when a researcher collects when the researcher chooses a sample, he has to make sure that he will include all the population. So he has to indulge all the population, not only a special group of people. So in order to get more opinions about a particular topic, then all variety of people has to be indulged on a common topic, not on a specific topic. On a common topic, all group of population has to be specifically indulged, then the accuracy will be more. So that is survey non-response error. Now coming to the next type of error, that is error related to accuracy of response. So the first one is question non-response error. So what do you mean by this? Some potential respondents refuse to answer the entire survey. Now what happens? The researcher have selected the sample thinking that the respondents will respond to the research activity. But what happens? Some potential respondents, so who is able of responding to the research work, but they will not respond properly to the researcher. So some potential respondents refuse to answer the entire survey. Perhaps it pertains to a sensitive topic. Suppose if there is an important topic and the respondent knows the answer, but he neglects to answer the question. So they are termed as what? Question non-response error. Some may choose not to answer specific questions. So you might have seen the questionnaire. So all the respondents will not answer all the questions. Some questions will be left empty like that. So they are termed as what? Question non-response error. Because the researcher have asked a question, but from the side of respondents, they have not answered it properly. Most often, respondents refuse to provide personal information that may place them to a risk, including information about the banking and finance, private personal behaviors, and information capable of identifying them. So normally this happens, the respondents will not reveal their personal information. So even though if it is there in the questions, so here the researcher has to be very careful while writing the question. So he has to be very careful while drafting the questions. He has to make sure that each and every respondents will be able to answer the question. Next one is surrogate information error. Now what do you mean by surrogate information error? In some research situation, the needed information cannot be obtained. Instead, you may accept substitute data that will act as a surrogate for the required information. Now, when the researcher does not get the exact information, so he will change the information with some other information. In the sense, he will replace the data with some other data. So they are termed as what? Surrogate information. The need for substitute information arises from either the inability or unwillingness of the respondents to provide the information requested. Now the researcher have requested the respondents to answer the question, but the respondents have not answered the question. In that situation, what the researcher will do? Researcher will substitute that answer with some other answer. That is known as what? Surrogate information error. Next one is measurement error. Now, measurement error can be taken place in many ways. So, measurement error is a difference between the measurement you obtain and the truth. So what you have obtained and what is the actual truth. So that difference is known as what? Measurement error. Measurement error can be introduced by the interviewer, the questionnaire, or by the respondent. So here this type of errors can be taken place by the interviewer or in the questionnaire or by the respondent. So these are the various types of errors relating to accuracy of response. So this is the errors which are included under business research design. My dear students, this is all about today's session. Hope you have understood the session. See you all in my next session with a new topic. Till then, take care. Thank you.